So Simple tutorial. Good morning students. Welcome to SST So Simple tutorial. In the previous class we had read about European Union and the ASEAN. Today we are going to discuss the rise of the Chinese economy. Let me introduce today's China first. China has the largest population in the world, approximately 1.5 billion people, though India is expected to reach this figure very shortly. It has the biggest land army in the world. Its GDP is the second largest in the world, about 14.72 trillion in 2022. It has maintained a growth rate of about 8 to 9% for the last many years. Its growth rate is such that it is expected to overtake the United States by 2040. This is a general picture of China today. Students, China is one of the oldest civilizations on this earth. Before 1911, the political system of China was monarchy. China was ruled by the Manchu dynasty. After the 1911 revolution, led by Dr. Sun Yat-sen, the Republic of China, or simply China, was established as a sovereign state in the mainland of China. In 1949, in a civil war, the Communist Party led by Mao Zedong defeated the ruling party Kuomintang, also known as the Nationalists, and established their government and called it People's Republic of China, PRC. The defeated nationalists then fled to the island of Taiwan, a territory which it had taken control of from Japan in 1945, and since then Republic of China, that is ROC, remains the government of Taiwan. In the Civil War, the US was supporting the nationalists against the communists. Naturally, the US was not happy with this event and so refused to give recognition to the new communist government, whereas USSR became the first country to recognize this government. You must keep in mind the time period. Cold War had already begun between the US and the USSR. That is why fall of mainland China to communism in 1949 led the United States to suspend diplomatic ties with the People's Republic of China for decades. Until 1971, the People's Republic of China government was not accepted as the permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. This position was held by the Republic of China government, ROC government. Diplomatic recognition by the United States came only in 1978. Our textbook covers the period basically after the 1949 revolution. Here we can divide the lesson into two periods. First, Mao period from 1949 to 1977. Second, reform period 1978 onwards, because 1978 is the year when the Chinese began to reform their system. In 1949, China's economy was not good. It was suffering from the ill effects of the decades of warfare. Many mines and factories had been damaged or destroyed. Transportation, communication and power system had been destroyed or had deteriorated because of lack of maintenance. Agriculture was disrupted and food production was about 30% below its pre-war peak level. As the nationalists fled during their defeat in the Chinese Civil War, they took away with them gold, silver and country's dollar reserves. Now, the immediate goal of the government was to restore the economy to normal working order. So what Mao did, he looked towards USSR and its leader Stalin for inspiration and based the economy on the Soviet model. He brought all the means of production and distribution such as banks, factories and commercial establishments under the state control. The state also took control of the railways, water transport and other industrial units. The agricultural land was distributed among the peasants. there was no problem of unemployment. The citizen had the right to work. Social welfare was assured to its citizen. The citizen had the right to state assistance in old age and also in case of sickness or disability. China was successful in giving food, clothing, shelter, and primary education to its people. In 1958, Mao launched the second five-year plan, which is also known as the Great Leap Forward. It was intended to transform agrarian society to industrial society. Emphasis was to create heavy industries just like the Soviet Union. China needed technology and goods from the world market, but there was no foreign exchange to buy them. So China began to produce those goods domestically that it used to import. This way, China used its resources to establish the foundation of an industrial economy. The economy grew well at a sober rate of 5 to 6%, but the population was also growing at the rate of 2 to 3%. This growth rate was unable to meet the needs of the growing population. Even the agriculture production was not sufficient enough to create surplus for the industry. The international trade of China was as such minimal, per capita income very low. China needed export markets for her industrial goods. China realized that good relations with the United States could be a great help here. As such, at that time, the US was no longer involved directly in conflicts against communist forces in Southeast Asia, whereas there were border disputes between the Chinese and Soviet Union, which included several skirmishes. So it appeared to them that Soviet Union was a bigger threat, not the USA. So in the 1970s, Chinese leadership took some major policy decisions. Students, try to understand the dynamics of international politics. See how the equation changes. Henry Kissinger, the US Secretary of State, paid a secret visit to China in 1971, which helped to improve relations. The United Nations recognized the communist government and gave them a seat in the Security Council. In 1972, US President Nixon visited China. This visit reduced tensions with the US, normalized diplomatic relations, and opened trade with the United States. Thus, by establishing its relations with the US in 1972, China was successful to end its political and economic isolation. In 1973, Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai proposed the four modernizations: first in agriculture, second in industry, third science and technology, and fourth in military. But these were not implemented immediately because of certain reasons. During this time, Mao was not keeping good health and died in 1976. Mao was succeeded by Deng Xiaoping. He is called architect of modern China. He led China through a series of far-reaching market economy reforms. The second phase, that is the reform period, begins now. In 1977, the modernization plan as proposed by Zhou Enlai were adopted as a means to rejuvenate China's economy. The aim was to strengthen China in the fields of agriculture, industry, military, and science and technology. By 1978, Deng announced the open door policy. Open door policy means that they opened the door to foreign businesses that wanted to set up in China. This policy was meant to generate higher productivity by investment of capital and technology from abroad. Dear students, what is worth observation here is that unlike Soviet Union, China did not introduce market reforms at once, but moved step by step. This is how it saved itself from shock therapy. So, beginning from the country's founding in 1949 until 1979, the economy was a centrally planned system which encouraged rapid industrialization while keeping the reliance on foreign economic investment relatively low. But with the introduction of SEZs, special economic zones, the country was allowed to transition from a centrally planned system to a capitalist market economy. In 1980, special economic zones SEZs were set up. This way, China became the most important destination for foreign direct investment FDI anywhere in the world. Do you understand what special economic zone is? Special economic zone is an area within a country that has economic regulations different from other regions. These regulations tend to be conducive to foreign investors and thus attracts foreign direct investment. In the SEZs, the investors get some additional economic benefits like tax relaxations, etc. While many countries have set up SEZs, China has been the most successful in using SEZs to attract foreign capital. In the red circles, you can see the SEZs. They are mostly located on the coastal areas. Initially, only four were set up in the 1980s: Zhuhai, Shenzhen, Shantou, and Xiamen. Others were set up later on. In 1982, Deng started privatization of agriculture. The results were very encouraging. There was a remarkable rise in the agricultural production and thus rural incomes. This acted as a boost to rural industries also. In 1998, Deng started privatization of industries. The Chinese economy, including both industry and agriculture, grew at a very faster rate. Since its inception, SEZs have contributed 22% of China's GDP, 45% of total national foreign direct investment, and 60% of exports. SEZs are estimated to have created over 30 million jobs, increased the income of participating farmers by 30%, and accelerated industrialization, agricultural modernization, and urbanization. In recent years, China has been the second largest recipient of FDIs worldwide, attracting approximately $181 billion in 2021. China has accumulated massive foreign reserves. In 2021, the foreign exchange reserves in China amounted to over 3.2 trillion US dollars. With this much of reserves, it is making big investments in other countries. China formally became the member of the World Trade Organization in 2001. Thus, it got access to the markets of all member states. So students, this is how economy of China rose. In 1972, when President Nixon visited China, China produced very few manufactured goods. But today it is the world's largest manufacturing powerhouse. Markets all over the world are flooded with goods made in China. While the economy of China had developed so much, the benefit of development has not reached to all equally. Let us see some problems faced by China today. There has been a rise of unemployment with about 100 million people looking for jobs. Employment among women is also not good. Conditions of work for women are also bad. There is regional disparity in development. Economic development has been more rapid in the coastal provinces where SEZs are set up compared to the inland. Urban areas are more developed compared to the rural areas. Corruption has been on the rise. The rapid industrialization has led to environmental degradation. So these are some problems, and given the size and population of the country, problems will always be there. But one thing that we have to agree is that China has become an economic power. The interdependence of the major economies and the growing integration of China with the world economy has made China influential even in the world politics. Hence, its outstanding issues with the United States, Japan, ASEAN and Russia has been softened or toned down because of the economic considerations. In the late 1990s, much of the East and Southeast Asia was grappled with financial crisis. At this time, while IMF came to their help, China also made some financial contribution as bailout package. This had improved the reputation of China in this region. China has entered in South America and Africa by making not only investment there but also giving aid to some countries. Look at the news. China's total loans to Africa during 2000 to 2018 has been of $148 billion. Even in Asia, China has been an important aid contributor to Sri Lanka. China is also a good friend of Pakistan and frequently gives aid to Pakistan. Look at this news. Recently, in the month of February, China has approved a loan of 700 million US dollars to Pakistan. One thing that you will observe is that during Cold War, USSR was competing with the US only as military power. But at present, China is competing with US both as military and economic power. The rise of China is clearly indicating that there may be a shift of power from the United States to China in near future. Before we wind up the session, let us see these cartoons. You can see the Great Wall, you can also see the dragon. So there should be no difficulty to identify this cartoon with China. The Great Wall and the dragons are the two symbols that most commonly associate with China. Using these two symbols, the cartoonist has depicted the rise of Chinese economy. The wall seems to cover the whole world, which is probably intended to mean that China is dominating the world economically. The man standing before the dragon has to be United States, which will never like China to unseat his position. Let us look at this cartoon. This shows the duality in China. This shows two ideologies working together in China. Basically, China followed communist ideology, but after 1978 it adopted open door policy. So as far as economics is concerned, it is capitalist, but for other purposes it remains communist. China is shown here as a cycle, which in theory may be communist but in practice follows capitalism. So the front wheel is symbolic of communism and the rear one capitalism. Let me stop here, students. I hope you have understood the topic. Now read your textbook once. In the next lesson, we will discuss India-China relations. Till then, keep reading and have a nice time. Thank you.